welcome to Unreasonably Optimistic. Now, this is the podcast about embracing change, building things, breaking things, all with a really unhealthy dose of optimism. And today, we've got Ryan Graham, who's a life coach and an entrepreneur and a leader. She's got over 20 years experience in the wellness industry. She's built multiple successful businesses, from a massage therapy practice to a thriving life coaching business. And her newest chapter is with RamLea. She's a sought-after speaker, dedicated to the community, marathon runner who qualified for the Boston Marathon. Is there anything you don't do? Oh yeah, you also ran the Grand Canyon. And she's about to bring some inspiring insights and some contagious optimism. So let's go ahead and dive in.
I'm so honored to be here, and I just appreciate you having me on today. So let's get going.
So there's a lot that I packed into that like one rambling paragraph. So kind of take us back and tell me about the businesses you've started and just kind of give us the overview of that.
Yeah, thank you for asking that. I went to college and got a degree in speech pathology and audiology, and I've done zero with it. So from that led me into 9/11. And when 9/11 hit, I was like, what am I going to do with my life? And decided to go to massage therapy school. I always loved the wellness industry. My mom had given us gift certificates for facials and massages, and just thought, you know what, I'll just pivot right now and just take a breather because life is so short. And so I went to massage therapy school and got my certification in trade school. Loved it. Actually started a practice right off the gates. Just loved it. I have a business partner that I actually met in school who we were two different individuals, walked two separate lives. And when we joined, it was amazing. I had a partnership. I never even knew that I needed to do due diligence in a partnership. I mean, because when we got together, it was perfection. And I can say in those 15 years of practice, we probably had 3 disagreements. So is that an anomaly to a partnership? I feel certainly. I didn't know that at the moment. So I'm grateful for that experience because it also taught me a lot about in those 3 different disagreements, what it looked like to conflict resolve. Through that, I actually started a network marketing business just in the wellness industry. I was an ambassador for a company. I love that. It gave me the opportunity to come home and be with my 2 boys who are now teenagers. And at the time, I really realized the value in having that flexibility and not being tied to my profession because I was trading time for hours. And so through that opportunity, I was coaching people in their wellness journey. And it wasn't just about helping them with products and giving them a new leash on life and helping them to feel better. But what I realized is that a lot of times when we're holding on to things, it can turn into physical ailments. It can turn into physical discomforts. It can turn into physical things. And I'm not certain why I didn't see that or understand that when I was a massage therapist, but I realized this through that. And so I did a lot of my own, I'd say, internal work on why I did what I did in my own life, why I had this internal messaging, why I was programmed the way that I was. Was it generationally? Was it because of who I ate the most meals with in lifetime? And through that process, I'd hired a coach, and he was out in California. He actually had been incarcerated. So what he did was literally, I felt like I had a really good life growing up. He just cut open the wounds, poured salt in them, and said like, okay, here, let me deliver this on this silver platter. Good luck. And so it really made me come to this realization that we hold on to so much. And so through that process of coaching for my own self, I thought, I can help other people like this. This is the wellness industry. Yes, I can give them a product, but I can also help them to better understand why they're doing these and then start making incremental changes with small steps, creating that compound effect. And so through that, I created my life coaching business and kind of removed myself from the wellness portion of that, which is just the health products, and got into life coaching on its own. And then the last couple of years, I met a business partner and a friend somebody I did not know. We were literally 6 degrees of separation in our professions for the last 20 years. And she was also in the life coaching space. We worked on a life coaching certification program for another coach here in Birmingham. And when we were finished, we were like, what's next? And we jokingly say at the end of our coffee meeting, we had an LLC form, we had an event form, we had a business ideas, we had a growth plan, we had everything on paper, and it was about a 4-hour coffee meeting, and we've hit the ground running since then. So we're grateful to be able to go now into corporations and not only work with individuals that we are working with outside, but work with individuals inside corporations and their teams to help them not only address what they were addressing, but address that within their companies to help really just build better culture. You're seeing that shift in the boomers and all the generations kind of shifting up. And what does that look like? It's generational skill set exchange, it's internal messaging, it's how do we connect better and have this, what we trademark coin phase, connection growth within a company and organization to build a legacy secure company bigger and better than it is today. So when we are gone, what does it look like, and is our mission still being carried out exactly the way that we envisioned it? So
that's kind of a heavy thing to come in with for a lot of companies. When you talk about that, like a lot of them are like, I'm just trying to make payroll next month.
right.
And you're talking about legacies.
Yes, I think that's the big thing with a lot of companies, and rightfully so. I mean, I was in my own business. It's always, you're not working inside the business. You're working on on the outside. You're working on the mission. You're working on getting the people right, and then serving them. And oftentimes we forget about working on the inside of it until we had that ugly little period in our life called 2020 that happened to us, shook things up, and made us realize, like, wow, people are people, and we've got to start seeing people as people, because we can't separate ourselves professionally and personally. We walk into spaces with our own personal lives into our professional lives. And how do we help corporations to see that person as Ryan and the skill set that she has, not the role that she's actually just playing?
So do you, and trying to wrap my head around, kind of the way RamLea operates, do you guys go in and are you trying to help the individuals, or are you trying to help like the entity or the organization become sort of bigger than just a flat cold organization, or is that kind of both the things together? Like how does this work? What does
Right.
an engagement look like for you?
That's a great question, because, like I said earlier, it's like handing you something on a silver platter. Here's your tangible. We don't have that tangible for a company, but we know the ROI could be huge, because when you can see a human for a human, you address the most valuable resource in your organization, and then those people, that heartbeat, can get behind the mission better. So we look at the company and the teams and the people as one. Essentially, data spreadsheets and P&L statements are very valuable tools within a company, and we find those valuable, but we also know the most valuable resource in the company is actually the people behind your mission. And so if we can attack that at a better, maybe a different perspective, because we have this perception of what it's supposed to look like, and here's our mission, and let's get behind it. What if we saw the people, and then they had their own perspective on what the mission actually felt like to them, and then we're using their own characteristic traits, skill sets to come to the table, because now we've actually opened up a can of worms, and they're not just in their role doing exactly what their box says they're supposed to do.
Speaking of opening a can of worms, have you ever come to a company and started an engagement and they're like, so we want to put everything back in the box. Like what you just did sort of created this whole mess now. The Legos are on the floor
Yes.
and we don't want to build this anymore. We just want to throw the Legos away.
Yes.
Like, does that happen?
Yes. Yes. More so than it doesn't happen. And I think the big thing is, my coach once told me that change is not hard, it's new. And so a lot of times I feel like companies, when they start doing something, they're changing, it is new, and it's a new concept. It's a new way of thinking. It's a new perspective, because we have our own perception of how we see the world. Right. And it's called awareness, and it's personal awareness, and it's situational awareness. And so I think Forbes maybe said that 10 to 15%, and this is pretty new data, of people in the world actually have self-awareness. That's a very low number. And if you don't have this self-awareness, it's hard to have situational awareness, or external awareness, if you will. And so these new concepts are somewhat scary, and they can be audacious in companies when they've been doing it a certain way for decades. Even when we had 2020 and COVID, all of that might have taken us off the beaten path a little bit, but everybody's tried to jump back in with maybe a little bit of adjustments, but not necessarily massive adjustments, so to speak. So there's a few that have slightly adjusted majorly.
So I haven't been able to get out of this thought as soon as you said that there's only a certain percentage of people that are self-aware, and I immediately go, "Am I aware? Am I self-aware? Is this since I'm asking that question, does it make me self-aware?"
Yes,
So,
that's a great question to ask.
but
I believe everybody should have a coach so they can understand better if they are self-aware. I didn't really understand what that meant until I got into coaching, really. And self-awareness is that we have a better understanding of who we are, what our internal messaging says, so that when we are having conversations with people, when we receive feedback, whether it be good, bad, indifferent, how do we actually respond to it, or do we react to it? And so a lot of that just means, okay, do I need more information about this, or am I going to go ahead and try to win this conversation? And so a lot of that is, if we have self-awareness, we can ask more questions to get to, more answers, which leads to more connection and engagement, rather than saying you're right and I'm wrong, or I'm right and you're wrong. Right. So there's no kind of bitterness at the end of the day. So self-awareness about who we are can yield to so much more connection and engagement.
Have you read a book called Super Communicators
I have
by
not. I'm going to write that down.
Charles Duhigg?
Okay.
It's really interesting. It's about the people who are the best communicators, and he goes through a lot of research, and it's often not the people that you would think, just the extroverts, but it's people that ask a lot of like how questions,
Right.
And like, how does it make you feel, and how does they even when it's uncomfortable, they're like, tell me more about that, like what did that feel like? And it's a really interesting exercise of how much you realize sometimes you don't do that for people.
Right.
And in some cases, I think it's because it's an uncomfortable conversation.
Yes.
Right? And in other times, it's, to your point, I wrote this down. Am I trying to win the conversation? Right? Yeah. There's this, I tell people about this all the time. There's a really great monologue from this movie called The Big Kahuna, and it's by Danny DeVito does the monologue. And basically what he says is that, are you aware of this?
Oh, well, when you said Danny DeVito, it's in one of our slide decks. I love him.
Okay. So it's this great monologue about how everyone's in sales.
Right.
And as soon as you take a conversation and you put your hands on it and you direct it in a new direction, you're selling something.
Yes.
Perspective, opinion, any of those things. And it's a fascinating thought, because a lot of people don't like to think that they're in sales.
Yes. Everybody.
That's right.
Everybody's in sales every single day. Somebody's like, I don't like sales. I'm like, really? Could you sell me your shoes, or could you tell me? Yes, because if you have something you care about deeply, then you will. And one thing that you said too, going back to about asking people, I mean, that's what I do on a daily basis, is ask for more information, ask for more questions, tell me more. How would it make you feel if, on a scale of 1 to 10, curious if, and those types of questions really help people think, okay, thank you for seeing me. Thank you for helping me feel valued. But somebody once told me, it's not what you say, it's how you make people feel. And so I've always been a very curious person, but just even remembering someone's name, that to me, it's the greatest word that someone can ever hear is their name. And so I always remember somebody's name, because I feel like that helps somebody to feel the value in who they are, and I always address it that way. But questions of curiosity just really shows so much about being a more empathetic person, right? Coming to the table with a little bit more empathy towards having a desire to connect.
Yeah. Well, and that's right. Like, understand that point of view in a deeper way, rather than just like, oh yeah, I've been to Atlanta. Glad to hear you live there. Moving on to the next thing. Right.
Yes.
Yeah. Actually, when you said this, I'm going to try this with someone next time. When someone says I'm not good at sales, be like, tell me why.
Yes.
Because now you're selling me on why you're not good at sales.
Yes, exactly. There you go. Why you're not good at sales. Yes. Yeah. The sell trick. Yeah.
Tell me more about that.
Yes.
Okay. Well, I'm sold on this. I don't want you to be my salesperson.
Right. Thank you. Thank you for letting me know why you're not good at these things. Fired.
Fired. Okay. So I think here's what's really interesting about what you do, and correct me if I'm wrong. and I have a lot more questions about it, but I probably could eat up an hour of that. But you're kind of in a little bit of a blue ocean,
Mhm.
meaning that there's probably not a ton of people that are saying, "Hey, I want to talk to someone who's a life coach to give my company life coaching."
Mhm.
Right? And I'm using the wrong words for this, but
Right.
I'm sure there's demand for it, but probably not as much as you would potentially expect. I mean, because I
Right.
think a lot of companies don't think of that first, like, "Ooh, I have to build the culture first, and products and sales and everything come second."
Yes.
So, tell me a little bit about how you and your partner have built demand for the business, and the way that you're growing opportunities for yourselves.
That's great. It's twofold to that because you can start with a brand new company that has really no culture yet, just one person and maybe one hire, right? So an employee and a CEO. And I think the big thing with that is really just like the onboarding process and getting your company to understand the why. So if you can understand, and I know Simon Sinek did that so well and brilliantly, that book, Start With Why. If you can have your company and your organization understand your heartbeat and your why, then that stems conversation that always goes back to the why. Why did this company start? Why are we doing this? What is the mission? Why are we getting behind this? So that right there is number one. We can start with a company that has very little people in it, and then we can start with larger companies that started with a mission that's great and wonderful, and they've just always wanted to increase ROI by looking at the numbers. And so that's great, but when the numbers start not showing, good results or ROI, at that point it's a reflection of, okay, well, what is the culture? How does it feel? What does it look like? And I think the big thing for us is we can come in and do outside assessments for companies that really show emotional capacity of your employees. It can also show what the compensation structure looks like and feels like to your employees. It also shows how you communicate, how your team communicates with you. Do you even communicate with the CEO or the C-suite executives? What does that look like? And so these assessments really give us a better idea outside looking in, because you might have a great HR team, you might have a great team lead, but there might be one team that's not actually in alignment with what your company's goals and mission are. And so when we can take an outside view looking in, then we can decide what is going to be best for you. Is it that your company really needs this 3-month intensive, or is it that we need to offer, because you've had many people leaving because of the mental health crisis being up, just an HR component where we're collaborating and we're providing one-on-one coaching services to your employees, so that you actually have employees staying at work and not driving an hour to receive life coaching and then driving back to work an hour. So they're missing 3 hours of the day, which, during seasons of life, those types of things are necessary. So to sell someone, I feel like you can bring in a consultant, you can do a bunch of leadership training and raise up leaders, but I feel like every single employee is hired because they have a leadership quality inside of them to play out whatever it is in that role, in that position that they were hired for. And so we're not coming in to increase leadership training or skills or any of that. We're coming in to help the individual and the company to see this individual as a person and not just as their role, but the skills, the talent, the character traits that they actually have that maybe they've never even discovered because they've never engaged to discover. And so that is different, because Susie might have a quality that she could actually provide, something to John, her team lead, and he hates to do that work. But he's never known that Susie possesses that quality to take that off his plate, or that she'd have a strong desire to even do that. And then what does that do? That builds morale, because then when you build morale, Susie might actually get elevated to a new position because now she has shown that she has more responsibility and can, you know.
What tools are you using for assessments, and trying to, because there's a lot of stuff going on in the background that's like getting from, hey, we show up, and then all of a sudden we start finding people that are right person wrong seat type of a deal.
Yes, that's often the case too, because I found really the most successful companies are the ones that hire really good people and they are in the wrong seat and you're able to place them in the right seat. So we actually created our own assessment. There are plenty of great assessments out there. We just didn't feel like the assessments that were out there really did anything for emotional capacity, compensation, communication. And when we decided to do this, we were like, okay, we could pull 4 or 5 different assessments, or we could just create our own and figure it out on our own. So it's our own assessment, RamLea Partners assessment.
I like that.
Yes.
Are there certain types of companies that you find, I like some of the things you were talking about? Are you familiar with EOS?
Yes, very familiar.
Okay, so some of the things that we're talking about kind of frame around some of Gino Wickman's,
Yes.
theories and all that stuff. So do you find companies like EOS run companies, or, companies in specific industries that they tend to be more open to this? Because I think I've been in companies where we've done culture index stuff and
Mm-hmm.
used those assessments, and I think they're brilliant.
Mm-hmm.
I also think that people weaponize them too.
That's right.
And
Right.
use them for the wrong purposes rather than like really being empathetically trying to help people. So all that being said, where do you feel like your most successful opportunities are?
We are in for-profit, nonprofit, and faith-based organizations. So we're really across the board, and we've seen all of them really take hold to it. It just depends. Financial institutions have been open to this a lot. I feel like, every corner that we drive on, there's a different financial institution. There's a lot of mergers, there's a lot of acquisitions happening. I think the big portion is that trying to merge a mission and a brand with another mission and a brand, and how do we bring those two together without saying, oh, yours is nothing and ours is better, right? So really those companies that are going through a lot of acquisitions, we're seeing that mergers and acquisitions. It's like, how do I help this entity to not feel separate of what we are and what we've created, and then also what they created? So really just those organizations, and then, like I said, banking institutions where there's a lot of changes happening there, and churches. Churches. There's even several churches that have HR directors now, and as we know, HR directors have a big job, but a lot of times they're just putting on the fireman helmet and, blowing everything down in the day. It's like what pops up, so they don't really have the time to do that. So that's where we are going in, is the mergers, acquisitions, and then these churches that are just becoming mega churches, and then nonprofit organizations where we're helping them work between board members and staff, because obviously, they have a lot of staff turnover, and then it costs the organizations a lot more to hire and utilize their funding to hire someone that's better. And so really just helping to keep those staff members engaged, and the board members to have a better understanding of just skill set exchange, connection, and engagement, and not separate of what staff is trying to do for organizations and nonprofit.
So do you help them to identify the right person for specific seats and then help them to recruit in those elements too? Or is that kind of like, here's your, you're like,
I have great referrals for all entities. No, I don't. I feel like the best thing we can do is expose someone to who and what they are, and really get down to the wire. Like, are they there because they got into a role in their 20s in marketing and that was just the path they took? But actually they have a skill set that's better, in sales. That is really what we are trying to expose. I say expose in a way, just highlight, highlight within a person so that they can really realize what they're capable of. And then the company can also say, wow, we hired you for marketing, and now I see why we should be moving you over to this, team.
right. Yeah.
So,
No, there are things like marketing sometimes are catch-alls, right?
yes.
There's a lot of positions where people just kind of fall into them,
Mm-hmm.
but they don't necessarily have, it's an incongruent skill set, I would say.
Yes.
It's not they don't have it, but they have better skill sets in other places.
Right. I feel like it was a college degree when it was I guess, a heavily weighted decision on a lot of people. Like, oh, I'll just do marketing. Like, what does that even mean? Okay, well, you can do a lot of things with marketing. Okay, what can you do? So yes, I completely agree with you.
Well, I'm glad you asked about marketing, because that's also my next question.
Ask away.
Well, tell me about like how you guys are marketing yourselves. How are you, what are you taking advantage of? What do you feel like have been your strongest, ROI components? Kind of walk me through some of that.
Yeah, I feel like we're always figuring that out. I mean, the best thing to do is to hire an agency to do it for you because I feel, yes, I feel like, you can try to have you can try to do it your way. You can try to figure it out, but it's ever changing and strategies are ever changing. I feel like the thing that we're doing well with what we're doing is creating workshops to give people kind of a backdoor entry into what we're doing and a small way of getting their foot in the door to say, okay, this is what we're doing. This is what it feels like in a workshop setting. This is not an intensive. And then once they get a little feel for what we're doing, they can walk out. So as far as marketing goes, I feel like the best thing to do is to give people a little something for free. Here's a little bit something for free, and let me present to you our ideas, and then let's see if you like that. And, obviously, same with drip campaigns, same with, um, social media posts. I mean, it's the same thing. If you give people a little bit of information for free, it's like, oh, okay, I see what they're doing. Yeah, I'm open to conversation. So I always feel like giving someone something for free yields open conversation between two people because they have a little bit more information and you're not trying to keep or hold on to something that is your intellectual property.
And I'm not the first person that's ever, said this out loud. I like the idea of just like, you can have it all. I'll tell you everything.
Mhm.
Because the reality is, you're probably not going to be able to implement it anyways.
That's right.
And if you do, you didn't put in the 10,000 hours beforehand and make all the mistakes that I've already made.
Yes.
So I'll tell you everything, but then you've actually got to go execute and you've got to be consistent and you got to do all those things. And so I kind of feel like you could tell people almost anything. Now, that free thing also is there's a fine line there where recently we've been, I'm like, oh, okay, we'll do this for free with someone. And then it ends up just not working as well because they don't have investment. I heard somebody say the other day, when people pay, they pay attention.
Mm-hmm. Yes. So we also can agree to that. More recently, we gave a couple of things for free away at the beginning of the year because our business is only almost 2 years old, a year and a half old, a year and a half old, year and a half in the making. Year and a half in the making. And so we look at our entity, it's like, okay, what can we give somebody? So it's just to get people familiar with this new idea, new way of quote consulting. Okay. And so we decided from that point that we would actually, sorry, I'm gonna drop this, that we actually would take our information and then utilize it in a workshop setting, but charge just a little much. And it wasn't even a lot. It was just to say, I value what you're doing. I want to be there. I'm going to show up. And this is my skin in the game too. And so with that, I mean, people will show up. Even if they pay a little bit of money, not much, they're going to show up for that. So that's important for sure.
Kind of tell me a little bit about a little. So, I know you said you're doing the workshops, which I really, really like the idea of a workshop. And I immediately started thinking like, okay, is that something, we talk about them as webinars, but a workshop's a little bit more like on-site intensive. I mean, you there for a couple of days?
Yes, we've done 2 day events. We've also done 2 hour events. I feel like, what's the sweet spot? I don't really know. I feel like the sweet spot is whatever your audience says it is, right? So we've really tried to do both of them to see what lands. Um, and for us, an event is great and we can go and we can talk and we can speak all day long. But if this type of work, if somebody's not applying what we're doing, we're not giving them real life scenarios, they're not actually playing it out, they don't have someone they're in conversation with, then they walk out of there with information that could be applied, but they haven't even tried it yet. And so there's a little bit of fear and trepidation to do it. And so we feel like those workshops are better because you actually can take the work, integrate the work, and then step out and really actually apply what we've taught you immediately, because we give you an acronym that we created, and I'll say it's called TRACE, that literally takes someone through steps to integrate exactly what we do and what we teach. And this can be taught and done in workshops, and team meetings and webinars and Zoom meetings with one-on-one with, a client and a client associate. So this can be implemented quickly. And that's why we feel like these workshops are just an integral part of our marketing. And then also, who and what we are with our, clients, prospects, whatever you want to call them.
Well, and you're getting a quick win. Like
Yes.
they get the experience, they get the quick win. I like that there's a small investment in that. I think that's a really, really, really smart way to go about that. So kind of tell me about some of the things that you're doing that, from an outreach and from a marketing perspective that you thought have worked really well, or some things that you kind of were like, we tried this and this just didn't work, or like, give me some other things that you guys are working with.
I would like to say that we have some crazy marketing strategy that's worked and something that hasn't worked, but I don't feel like we've been in business long enough to try something that has been like, okay, this worked really, really well for so long. I wouldn't say we are throwing paint up against the wall, but it's like, let's just get our information out there and get it out there in a really consistent way with what we feel like our brand says. And so to us, it's been leaning out our message and presenting that idea on social media platforms, podcasts, places like that, where we feel like our message is congruent and consistent. And so that's what we feel like has landed best for us right now. Now, strategies for future, certainly we have tons of ideas. But like I said, I do feel like working with someone to say, okay, these are our ideas. With these ideas, where do you think we should go? Where do you think we should take our business if this is what we're trying to seek? So as far as what we've done currently, I feel like it's gone well, but I do feel like there's definitely room for us to expand through hiring a professional.
Yeah. Well, I think the biggest problem is access. There's access to everything. Like, you can do anything, but it's very hard to really put a strategy in place and then go and do all of it. And then you see something on, Twitter or Instagram, like, this is the new thing you got to be doing with AI,
Yes.
And it's very, very hard.
Yes. Especially running a business. I do feel like, you're trying to run a business and do what you're passionate about and land all that. And then you're like, oh, okay, I got social media and I've got to manage social media. And, it is all too much. But at the same time, people are on social media still, right? People still read publications. I mean, I do. So, and maybe, different generations obviously are looking and reading obviously different things. So for me, it's a magazine. For me, it's social media. And so those are the types of things that I feel like are most important for who we're trying to approach, because that's the generation that's leading companies. So that's where we are.
Yeah, for sure. Well, and once you build something for one, it's kind of easy to share it with another one. So even if TikTok maybe isn't the place where your CEOs are or your HR directors are, there's no barrier to entry other than just, let me share that along with everything else. But that, again, in itself can sort of mushroom too and be hard to control. So let's talk a little bit about 2025. We're almost at the end of the year. What are the big plans for next year?
Well, we have a lot of big plans for next year. I don't know if I want to share all my secrets here. No, I'm just kidding.
I don't know if I should be offended or like really excited.
No. We have some workshops, a really big workshop we feel like in the works for the end of the year. We did one in 2023. We took a pause in 2024 really to lean out our message and really found our focus on the businesses that we wanted to attack and help and approach. And then 2025, we have another event called the Fierce Connection that we hope to host by the end of 2025. As far as what we're doing, I mean, our goal really is to come alongside organizations, HR, HR and do some collaborations there. We also want to continue speaking. We have a couple of speaking engagements that haven't been settled on yet, but we're closing out the year with a couple of those. So that's exciting. And then looking into more in 2025. And then the intensives that we're doing. Our real hope is to get into some organizations that we know have some true economic impact and have in our city, and do some intensives to even see that build a more legacy secure company. Like we mentioned, you have that organizational legacy that can take it beyond what these boomers have built, and see those organizations go for the next 10 years or 20 years or 30 years on that mission. So that is our that's our big goals in a nutshell. And we're excited about what's to come in 2025.
That's awesome. Well, I think you've got a lot of momentum going into next year. So
Thank you.
that is good.
Thank you.
Yeah.
We're excited.
I know it. I know it. So kind of let's wind this down a little bit. Why don't you tell me, like, if you could give one piece of advice to entrepreneurs, if you, and maybe it's part of your framework, but what would you tell them if right now they're like, I mean, they're in such different spaces. So I don't know what headspace I would say that this particular person is in, but any entrepreneur, I guess at any stage, from your perspective, what would be the best advice you could give them?
I mean, do it anyway. I feel like you can overthink things so much. And that's part of what we do in coaching is just not over processing, over analyzing, overthinking, because you will keep one foot on the dock and one foot on the boat the entire time, and you'll never just jump in it. And I think the big thing that I've learned through entrepreneurship is that I fail, but oftentimes when I fail, I mean, I'm like a boomerang. It catapults me 10 times further, and I feel like 10 more doors open up because I've just let go of that. The other thing I feel like is being adaptable and flexible and being a solution finder. I've often been told no, 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 no. And like we talked about in sales, it's really just about asking more questions to have a better understanding so that you have more clarity around the direction in which you need to go. And so for me, it's like, have your idea, start on it, then create your growth plan, and then have flexible and adaptable goals so that you can move forward. Because I can guarantee that the goal that I've started with, I know, with RamLea Partners, with RWG Wellness, and all my previous businesses, it was not the end goal, right? It was not the end finality or the middle or anything like that. So I feel like you can have a start, but your finish is often going to look very different from what you even envisioned it to be.
Yeah,
so
almost never will be what you envision it to be.
Yes.
And I love to say that running a business is it's a series. It's like a roller coaster of uninformed optimism,
Right.
and then informed pessimism, right?
Right. Yes, you're
Gonna
not
be
wrong.
great.
Yes. Everybody's like, starting a business is so fun. I'm like, yes, 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 it is. Yes, it is. And just get ready. It's so fun. It's the hardest thing I've ever done in my entire life, and I continue to sign up for it.
I know it. Well, it's the alternate. It's better than the alternative.
That's right. Yes.
Yeah.
So I'm grateful for that. But thank you for asking me that. This has truly been an honor. I'm grateful to be able to be on your show, and I'm excited for those that it will reach, and hopefully it'll plant a seed in someone to think a little bit differently from what they've been doing with their consulting firms and leadership development teams and all the above.
I love it. That's perfect. If we want to get in touch with you, where's the best place to find you?
We're on all social media platforms as RamLea Partners. And then right now our website's under construction, but we have a landing page, ramleapartners.com.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Incredibly, I'm grateful for this. Thank you. Have a good one.
All right, everybody. Thank you all for showing up today and listening. If you made it all the way through to the end, and make sure that you share this with somebody that it might help. Please make sure to subscribe, leave some feedback, leave some comments when everything gets posted, and reach out to Ryan if you know someone that needs help in this space, or someone who's trying to build a company and needs a good cultural foundation from the get-go. So thanks, everybody. Take the